Thanks a lot for taking the time to watch. Basically, my whole premise in doing videos is to just kind of promote an awareness that can percolate into our society, maybe slowly at first, and in whatever way it catches hold. And the main way I like to do that in the work that I do is through what most people would call addictions, which the word, doesn't really mean one thing specifically. I use it pretty liberally in society to describe kind of the behaviors that are exhibited by, I would say, most of us, to be quite honest, myself included. I don't think I've met one person, maybe I've met a handful, I don't know, but very few people anyway, who I would say are free of addiction in the way that I use the word, which is the compulsion to seek something outside of oneself, beyond the basic requirements of our existence as a human being. So, I mean, that pretty much leaves it, wide open to any type of behavior, any way that people would do that. Like myself, for instance, I went from, being a drug addict, smoking pot every day, drinking, heavily or whatever. And then, I went down to maybe smoking cigarettes and drinking tons of coffee. And then down to something like playing a lot of video games. I mean, that's just a hierarchy that, it seemed like the healthier I got, the less damaging my addictive behaviors got. And then now, the addiction that seems to be prevalent is, something like playing chess online or something like that. So it's like as I get more and more self-aware and more healthy in myself, the nature of that addictive acting out gets less severe in its consequence. But nevertheless, the analogy I like to use is, if I were to say my life is like a meal, my bodily existence and my day-to-day life is like maybe enjoying a meal of my experiences. How much crap would I allow in that meal? How much would be a good amount? How much would be acceptable to have in my meal, in my food? So obviously it's a no-brainer. So that's kind of the nature of, I'd say, most people, when it comes to addiction, is that there's sort of a little bit of that going on maybe in their lives that they can kind of cope with, and there's like a bad taste about it. Like, the person that maybe feels compelled to go shopping every now and again, even though they don't have the money for it, and they end up in a bit of debt. It's not that bad, but there's sort of this sense in their existence that they'd be better off without this behavior, without this pattern. But because society is so distracted and so consumed with things that are ultimately kind of trivial anyway, it's very easy to overlook a lot of these patterns in our lives because, they're not that bad, right? By comparison. So like, for instance, my little addiction with online chess, is not that bad compared to the guy who's doing heroin in the alleyway, So I'd be compelled to say, well, I'm not going to look at myself anymore. I'm not going to worry about, these little patterns of negativity that come up and make me want to act out in any way, in any sort of addictive behavior. And it's about defining it for myself, like what to me feels unhealthy, what feels like I'm kind of being enslaved by something that I don't really need, and that is taking time away from my own introspection or helping somebody else, or just being open to enjoying life. And no matter what that behavior is, it seems to have that same flavor to it. It's sort of it's a sense that like I'm restless, I'm kind of irritable, and I just need to do something about it. I need to log on and I'm doing my thing, or I open that third beer or something when my body feels like it doesn't want anymore. So I look at it in a very kind of general way, and a lot of people have criticized the way I look at it because it's so unsparing. It's like, in terms of my own sense, I don't let myself off the hook with any of this stuff, and that's what I feel. I feel grateful that I have that ability now, because a lot of the people I spoke to would make certain things that I was doing okay. They would justify certain behaviors because they were also doing those behaviors, and yet we're still kind of all being pulled around by our suffering in whatever way, still being kind of enslaved by these patterns. And the only reason this is important is because we all want to live a happy, joyous, and free life, as they say in AA. It's like we want to be happy with our existence at any cost. You know, that's all we want. We want to just be able to enjoy our day-to-day lives. That's it. You know, it's as simple as that. We want to live a free life, a life that's free of suffering and free of bondage, negativity, whatever you want to call it. And so as an addiction counselor, that's sort of my way in to that. It's like, okay, you have a person sitting here who's talking about a specific addiction that they have or that someone else has, and then their addiction, you know, we could say would be codependency, you know, wanting that person to get better so they feel better. So that's kind of the main theme that goes on, and I broaden it to such a degree. You know, I look at myself and I look at those around me and I see, wow, you know, the guy with the BlackBerry sitting at the sitting with a group of friends who's on his iPhone or whatever, and just being drawn into that, even though there's, you know, live human beings. So that sense of acting out compulsively to avoid a situation, to avoid what presently is, that's what I consider an addiction. Something that we think is favorable to the current situation, and then the sense of acting on that, you know, the sense of needing to act on that, not having the choice. So it's sort of that, it's like a loss of freedom. We inherently are born free, and we're also born to be free in every part of our lives, but we sort of compromise that for hits of pleasure that mask sort of a pain that we may have, something that we haven't dealt with yet. And so this sounds very tedious and very grim, and like a very sort of negative outlook on our society, but I feel that if we really get honest with ourselves and really start to resolve a lot of the stuff that goes on in us, I feel that we'll have quite an easy time in realizing the society that or not even the society, and just realizing it in ourselves, what we want for our lives, and then that will trickle into society, you know. So it's like, for me right now, all I have to deal with is this, you know, this body, this mind, and not even have to really micromanage it, just have to see it for what it is, and just have to be myself fully. I just have to fully be myself and just be honest with whatever comes up, and that will make me of service to everyone else. You know, anyone else that I meet will benefit from my own work on my own self. So I don't know if this really means anything other than just my own ranting for my own benefit. I don't know, but it's just a passion to share in that self-discovery and that revelation that we can be free of what binds us. You know, by grace and by our own cooperation, we can overcome anything, that even the most sticky thing, we can overcome it. So anyway, thanks a lot for watching, and all the best.